or something which I found which is lying there. Most days when I can't think of something, I just go through those and I'll find 5 things.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the ninth episode of Pepper Spotlight podcast. My name is Pawan Rochwani, and in this show, we try to bring the spotlight on some of the major trends in the content space and some content creators as well. I think as a child, I was always told that if you are into multiple things, you lack focus. And when you get old, you try to put this into the quote that jack of all trades, master of none. But I don't think in today's world we are in that kind of an era where people say jack of all trades, master of none. I think we try to put some folks and people into the label of multi-potentialites when someone has multiple callings. And I'm speaking to somebody like that today. And we're speaking to Varun Dugirala on this episode, who is the co-founder and chief content officer at The Glitch. He's also the podcaster at Advertising is Dead. And I think it's a show that I personally admire and listen to very dedicatedly. In this entire episode, we're going to speak to him about his process of how he looks at content creation, how he juggles between the multiple hats and experiences, and the work that he has by being an entrepreneur, being in the creative space, and also some traits of him as an engineer, because I'm also an engineer, and this is something that he frequently talks on his episode and asks his guests as to how some engineers turned into other profession, what are they doing in the ecosystem currently. In the entire episode, please feel free to share any thoughts or comments or quotes. If you like, please share it on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, wherever you're active on. And Pepper Spotlight is a weekly podcast show that releases new episodes every Wednesday. Please feel free to check us out on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. And if you have any suggestions or recommendations for us, please feel free to hit us a DM. This conversation with Varun was pre-recorded, so you listen to our conversation, which was done over a Zoom call from here on. Thank you so much, Varun, for giving us your time today and being part of this conversation and being on Pepper Spotlight. I think
I'm going to
every
say
time.
always a pleasure to be in a chat with you, especially because you will thank me 5 times. The Pawan I know will thank me at least 10 times by the end of this conversation. So I'm just waiting to see how many thank yous I get by the end of it.
Have people told you that you are a very helpful person in general? Like, do they compliment you that? Because you have been very helpful to me, how much ever I have known you since past few months. But do people tell you that you are very helpful?
So people say that actually people told me I'm too helpful sometimes because I'm okay. This is how I put it, right? Um, I don't believe there is anything wrong in being nice, and in many ways, the right way of being nice is to just be helpful. And I have an old school greeting card reason why I am nice, which is, but growing up, my mother's Godrej cupboard would have this sticker which said that good things happen to good people. Right. Somehow weirdly, I'm a big quote junkie. The oldest quote I ever remember, if you can call it a quote, it was a sticker with had a teddy bear on it. I remember it vividly. So that for me is somehow stuck, and I always believe in being nice. I mean, there's nothing wrong in just being like kind of helping someone out, and I think it pays you back in life. So that's pretty much what you leave behind.
But
Little
has being
philosophical
too
towards the end,
helpful
but yes.
or being too nice sometimes cause trouble to you?
Oh, um, I mean, there have been times, I'll be honest, is that I've learned to be smarter about it. I feel that in the early days of, not even just like when I started working, right? When you would be in college, you'd be in school, and you try and do something, and sometimes when you kind of feel let down, and you kind of then the tendency when you're younger is that you
Yeah.
go the opposite direction, and you try to be as much of the. I know I will not be nice to people as possible, but I think in the long term, it's been helpful. I think there have been many short term pieces, and sometimes those do lead to some sort of like you need to rewire yourself a little bit. You need to learn to not so. I learned somewhere in midway that there's a difference between being nice and being gullible. And the tendency, and once you can figure out that line, your life is a lot simpler. Because being nice and being, I don't know if I can use what language I can use, but being an asshole is not necessarily the opposite, right? You just need to find that line between gullibility and being nice, is the way I look at it.
Before I was going to even start this conversation, I was just going to tell you that, Varun, this is like one of the recordings and conversation where I don't want to keep it scripted, and I want to let my curiosity lead this whole conversation. Because every time I, see some social uploads from you, I am just fascinated by how you are, keep doing every day some new stuff, talking about some very interesting thoughts and ideas altogether. So I want to lead my curiosity,
Best way to
drive
do it.
this conversation. I want to start with this question that how do you manage to do all of these things while you are also co-founder and chief content officer at The Glitch, which is like a massive agency, and I'm sure there's so much of work that goes on into running the organization, but at the
Yeah.
same time, how you are, podcasting, writing a newsletter on Substack. You recently, became active and started on YouTube as well. So how are you managing time to do everything and be everything?
So there are a few things, right? If I had tried to do any of these things even maybe 4 years ago, I would not have been able to. I think there are multiple reasons. I'd say A, because I can work. Been working from home is when I started to scale things out, because I realized I could organize my time a lot better. When you're in an office, there are many things that are amazing, right? You can spend time with people, you'll do a little bit of time pass here and there. There are so many of those encounters which I don't think don't happen enough now, and which is why I'm a hybrid office supporter rather than only work from home supporter. That's really helped. On the other end, also at Glitch, I would say that as we became part of the network, which is WPP, as our leadership team really grew, I give Pooja a lot of credit for the kind of team she's kind of been able to nurture as CEO over time. My role also became a lot more simpler, right? There was a time when I would look after operations, finance, production, content, get into some, because I'm not a strat person. I'm not a creative from a traditional agency sense person. Right? I've always looked at the production side of it from that lens, which is why the word content was used. I think that kind of blends into it. Now my focus is largely our production business. What I look at is how can we kind of create at scale, how can we build solutions for clients, and those I have a solid set of people working on it. They tell me that we'll only pull you in if we really need you to get into it, which something they've had to force me into, because I have a tendency to kind of trying to get into things. Right, I've learned to kind of pull back, because when somebody really needs something, I'm approachable. So anybody across the office, anything, they always approach me. Worst case, I'll miss an email, and they'll have to bug me twice, but I will make sure it's done after that. So that's been my thing, which also allows me time to do all of this. I think also at some end, me pulling out my creator side has really helped Glitch as well. It just generally has helped me find very interesting talent. Has helped me kind of connect with brands a lot better. Like, because I think I have conversations with brands in a very different sense than I would have pre-podcast days. Right now, I talk to them on a very different lens, and that's really helped. And what it's also brought in to an extent is an understanding of what's happening outside of, we have this problem, right? I think the agency world has had this problem, and I always felt it. Is that you're in this one pond. We believe the advertising world is everything. It's not. There is so much happening outside it. In many cases, I know for a fact a lot of people find that stuff a lot more exciting. And I agree, a lot of that stuff is more exciting. So the way to look at it is to not say, oh, creativity is going out of advertising and all of those things. I look at it saying, okay, once again, this is the world we live in now. What is the future for every single part of what we do, right? What is the future of creativity for brands? What's the future for production, which is my biggest excitement? Weirdly enough, when people ask me for creative solutions, I'm like, I am excited by building out, how do I put it, process flows and structures for how to make production more effective for people, right? Which seems really boring, but I'm very excited by that. That's one of the things I love the most. So I would say that my varied interest, as you've seen in my response as well, where I've jumped to 4 different things, which is my problem in life, that I can't stay consistent onto one point. Having all these different things that I do through the day helps me kind of keep my mind focused, weirdly enough, and that's how my mind works. It's not for everyone. Um, I don't manage my time as well as people think. I also have the privilege of having help at home. Not someone who stays with us, but someone who help us through the day. I also have how do I put it? I have an amazing uh, circle of people around me who have understood how to work with me with my own bizarreness of things. And also, a lot of the content I do, I have kind of at some point found people who will work with me on it. So the YouTube stuff, there are people who are working on the edits of it. There's someone helping on mastering the audio. The guys at IBM really helped me a lot on advertising his dead. So all of this happens because there are many people helping out. My mind works fast in certain things. Like I can write really quickly. So my newsletter happens over like a 1 hour, like sitting and having some tea on a Friday night. I write it most times and I finish it off in like half an hour, 45 minutes. My podcast I hardly do prep because I do a pre-call with my guests. So that helps me because instead of sitting and doing research, I talk to my guests for about 15 minutes, even a week or so before. Talk to them about what they're really interested about. What are they kind of doing? What are they interested in talking about? And that gives me my notes because I make my notes while I'm talking to them. So 15 minutes is my research, which is my guest giving me my research, which is the best trick I have found. Right? It makes life simpler.
Yeah.
Because otherwise I used to think about, okay, let's Google them, let's find stuff, ask someone. I'm like, let me just ask the guest, like, what do you really want to talk about? That helps most times. And then schedule it during the day. We're recording it online, so I do an office meeting and I do a 1 hour podcast recording, go back to another office meeting, and then take an hour to go with my daughter for a skating class downstairs in the building. So everything can be scheduled if you're working from home, I've realized. It's a very long answer to a simple question, but yes.
No, I think, and I want to, bring out some of the things that you said in the answer was how you enjoy the production and all the process and that efficiency and all of those things. Me being an engineer turned into the
Same here.
creative domain, I also thoroughly enjoy all of these analytical things and trying to decode and all of those things. Um, do you think being an engineer and how we go through that 4 years of lifestyle has sort of helped us shape to become better creators, or just let's say have an advantage over people who come from the traditional arts background?
So all honesty, was a terrible engineering student. Hated all those years I did it because I got into engineering wanting to code, and because the one thing I still love to do in school was code, and I was terrible at everything else like math, physics, English, and all. I was fine, but like all your standard science stuff, I was not very good at. Math, I was really bad. So I somehow ended up in mechanical engineering, which didn't help. And I think I spent a large part of those 4 years really being unhappy about being an engineer. But I love technology, right? One of the things I don't talk about enough is I am supreme like tech nerd, pop culture geek. Like I have like the blueprint of the Death Star from Star Wars behind me. Like that is literally what is there behind me, right? So I watch every single YouTube review video from all your major YouTubers globally. I listen to 2 hour long podcasts when an Apple event happens or when OnePlus launches their phone. For me, that's my white noise. So my interest levels in science and tech, I don't know if they started from engineering, but I believe that was always my realm of interest. Is just that the way it was taught to me was something I never liked. Because I have a problem with conforming to a system. I look at saying what is the right system for it rather than what is the known system for it. Right? It's like it's not rebellious. It's just that I feel that there are always smarter ways to do it, and nothing is fixed. Everything is fluid. You need to kind of move with it. So I think that's why I wanted to do engineering. I don't know if that's what I got out of it, and maybe somewhere that I wouldn't call it frustration, but just the fact that I didn't get what I thought I would get, maybe fed through this because I've always enjoyed logistics because I was a producer in MTB and Channel V before we started Glitch, and my job largely was a large amount of logistics, also involved direction and stuff like that. But what I enjoyed was putting the pieces together for shoots and everything else, and I guess there was some part of that engineer there.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know if I want to credit any of my professors for it because I don't think they like me. I didn't like them. But yeah, I think there's something there.
But like a small sub question on that, you said that you really enjoyed coding, but you still ended up, or you did you choose or did you end up in the mechanical stream?
I ended up in mechanical.
So like, did you want like specific college only? That's why you chose that, or how was
So
that?
no, I was a management student. I'm because like I said, right, you give your entrance exams, and if you're bad at math, physics, and chemistry, you're not
Hmm.
going to get in through regular merit.
Yeah.
I ended up joining a college in Bangalore because when everybody has their management quotas, my dad spoke through a friend, figured something, and then obviously paid for, got me into it. They were supposed to move me to computers after year one. I joined as mechanical, and that was the whole point. And at some point, I flunked a bunch of papers. My fault. University came out with a rule saying you can't shift your streams if you flunked a couple of papers. So either drop a year, pass your papers, and move to computers, or continue in mechanical. And after 1 year, I'm like, dude, I'm not spending an extra year doing this. Which didn't help because I did do a 4 year degree over 6 years, but because I ended up doing that, had papers going on for a long time. But yeah, so that's why mechanical happened. There were parts of it I enjoyed. Like I used to enjoy and not for the right reasons. I enjoyed going to the foundry, the carpentry shop. You'd get stuff wrong in the lathe machine, and you'd have pieces of metal flying like next to your face, and
Yeah.
almost like. And in hindsight, it was very dangerous for to have like
Yeah.
19-year-olds playing with metal pieces which could fly onto your faces. But I guess that's how engineering works. But
Yeah.
yeah, so that's why
Yeah.
I did mechanical.
And I mean, just again, trying to understand more from that time, because in situations like this, or when it's, let's say, tough decisions that you have to make, how do you try to pursue it rationally, or make that decision rationally, whether you want to take a year back and then move to comp science or whatever, computer, or do you just say that no, I want to finish this in 4 years and go ahead? How do you rationally decide this when there's so much of emotional investment also going through, and it's like a big life decision altogether?
So I wasn't rational back then. I'll be very honest. I know for a fact that I was extremely lost as a person. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I ended up getting into doing engineering by virtue of I didn't know what else I would do in life. I didn't want to be. I come from a family of doctors and engineers. My parents never forced me to be either, but they said, okay, if you can't figure something out, do something at least um, that is it's stable enough. So I chose engineering, but they were open to me doing whatever I wanted. And at some point, I think through my period of school, it is high school and then engineering, I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I kind of had, and that choice kind of was more in terms of, okay, I don't want to spend more time doing this than it was me being rational. Um, I feel being rational kind of over time kind of came to me very weirdly after I worked on reality television. Um, I learned a lot of because I feel that one of the things that we don't give credit, reality TV credit for, and I'm talking early days, right? I don't know how it functions now. I'm sure there have been evolutions of methods because I had gotten into it at a time when it had just become a thing. Like my first job as an intern was do some research on roadies, right? Like way back in the day. This is like 2000, I think it was five or six, something like that. And I learned that you're dealing with human beings and you have to make choices that in some way make put them in situations where they will react. So you tend to think of it from that lens, and I don't know why that worked for me. That really worked for me to understand in some ways that if you do X, person reacts as Y, but if you do something else, they react a different way. And then you slowly start building these maps, right? You build these maps. Okay, and these are you're putting human beings in these situations, and I had a bunch of great people who taught me, right? And this is early days, so it's like there was Raghu at that point of time at MTV. There was a bunch of people who'd kind of built roadies to be what it was in those days. And so I learned a lot from them. I learned how to be organized from some who were very good. I learned how to be really instinctive in some cases.
Hmm.
It also gave me, like I mentioned, like I'm not a person who likes structure. I function in an extremely unstructured manner. It gave me the ability to be unstructured and being structured, which in some way I never had, right? So when you're in school, especially engineering college, and my college was unnecessarily restrictive. like you couldn't wear a printed t-shirt and stuff. Like t-shirt which had like a logo on it and stuff was not allowed, right? So I'm like, now those are things that, I mean, you make a rule like that. I still don't understand why you would ever make a rule like that. I mean, I know a
Yeah.
senior of, I got sent back once wearing a t-shirt which said Harvard University because my uncle gave it to me. And
Huh.
because they said you wear the t-shirt of this college and not anywhere else. So I'm like, I mean, I still don't understand the logic of any of those things, right? I mean, like, you would want to be Harvard, but okay, fair enough. Not dissing, not naming the college because I don't want to be an open disser. But anybody look through where I study engineering on my LinkedIn profile, you will know which college I'm talking about. Um, but yeah, so I feel that working in television really helped me. I feel once I moved out of Bangalore, went to Pune to do my mass comm, that entire experience of finding this entire world, which was not necessarily arts, but it was a lot of fun, right? Because it's hard work. It's harder work in production than anything I've ever seen because they ask the kind of work you do. I have many times tried to, like, till date, one of my biggest regrets, and I think it'll be my forever regret, is I've always believed I can find a solution for things. I have never found a solution about how to make a production team work and still have weekends. I have found it impossible. So my team tells me it's like the most impossible thing to ever come. But I'm always, there'll be one chat or two chats every year. I'm sitting there, guys, we still haven't figured it out. They're like, nahi hoga. Right.
Hmm.
So, but I think it's so underrated in the things they have to do because you need to understand the technical side. You
Hmm.
need to understand the human side.
Yeah.
It's also not an organized industry, right? So it's got many, like, it's like the Wild West, but you're playing with all elements. So
Yeah.
I feel that I learned a lot more of my structure, being rational, everything else. I give a lot more credit to working in television and then in production
Hmm.
than to engineering.
Got it. And I think I resonate a lot when you say that you probably function better in unstructured and this kind of manner, and how to sometimes be instinctive and sometimes just be rational about things. I think when I was listening to this February episode where Pooja was interviewing
Yeah.
you, and
Yeah.
you somewhere in the middle said that you sometimes take a little time to take decisions, and it's
Yeah.
about sometimes the time is right, or sometimes it just gets better with time. So, and I think I also sometimes function a lot in that manner, and that's why I was just curious about knowing at that point of time, how did you do that?
No, it's
uh,
terrible. I call it the dark ages for my parents when I was in Bangalore. I try to overcompensate as much as I can now because I think I was terrible for them in that, like, whatever 6 7 years I was in Bangalore. I also did really random things, right? I worked as a promoter for a couple of alcohol companies. I worked in a call center. I've done all kinds of things, right? So I went through a phase where they couldn't understand what is going on. Like, this guy's done
yeah.
engineering. He wants to work in a call center or wants to work for Jack Daniel's whiskey, right? So I'm like, what is he up to? And then suddenly one day I want to go and try and do modeling, and they're like, हो क्या रहा है मतलब till I eventually ended up in Pune and everything went the way it did, and then eventually I quit that to start Glitch, right? So again it was like question, okay, are you going back to old ways? You have a stable
Hmm.
job in Channel V, you're doing well, you've risen up the ranks, you're doing
Hmm.
larger scale shows, but yeah, at some point they were like, this is how it's going to be with him. He'll just suddenly one day switch out of things and want to start afresh.
If I can ask you this question, and would want to know how your relationship with the families, and how they were supportive to you, or just like how it has been throughout the year, how you were saying right now that now you have compensated for it and things like that. If that's an okay question to ask,
Yeah, of
would you
course.
want?
So my mom, this is mom and dad, and
Yeah,
and Pooja as well, or you're saying mom and dad primarily. I
parents, I
mean,
mean,
I'll give both
from the
there.
college school days.
So my mom and dad had me when they were very young. So I feel like, and I say this to them, I said we all grown up together because I think they were like what, 22, 24, like yeah, that kind of an age when they had me. I was really like young. They were studying. I remember my dad was in college when I was in kindergarten and stuff like that. Like, and at some point I feel that because they were young when they had me. I feel as we grew up, we all grew up together, and they the only thing they ever asked me for is like, when you're doing it, see it through. And I've always had a tendency to try something a little bit, don't like it, move away. Like, it's like when people talk to me about, okay, do you play any sport? And I can say I played all sports. Like I've tried to play shuttle, tried to play table tennis, cricket. I mean, you name all of it. I've played all of them. Not gone beyond a certain level in any of them. Right? So persistence was, or rather sticking to something was never my thing. And I feel that that's one thing they always wanted me to do. Saying be whatever you want to be, but make sure you do it well. And I feel that's the relation we always had. So even when I wanted to start this thing off, I gave them the logic of it. That I had enough of a portfolio as a producer in reality that even if Glitch didn't work out, in 3 to 4 months I could easily go out and get, even as a freelance producer, get work. So I showed them that. But more than anything else, I was like, okay, I'm going to do this anyway. It wasn't necessarily like, okay, I'm asking you, I want to do it. I'm doing this anyway. I want to explain the logic to you. And whenever I do explain the logic, my parents have been amazing. They always turn around saying, just go ahead and do it. And they're always like, do you need something? And so I've always been shameless enough that if I really needed some money or whatever, I ask for it. I don't shy away from these things. I'm like, okay, you can't let ego play in, okay, how can I ask, or any of those things. I'm like, once again, if it's required, I'm very open about it. I don't have any of those pieces. But anyway, we started Glitch at like bare bones. So after our first shoot between me and Rohit, I think we had 1,500 rupees. So it wasn't necessarily that we had planned our money well when we started the company. But yeah, so parents have been amazing. And I feel that what's also helped over time is that while Glitch was amazing through the initial years, and when Pooja kind of so Pooja brings structure into my life. She knows how unstructured I am, and she's the most structured person I know, which helps. So she kind of helps build those elements into my life. So while I don't have a system, there is a system in our general life. I've figured my unstructuredness within that, which is great. So everybody is happy. And I think that's also really helped, right? That's helps me do a lot of these things.
Got it. While you were answering that, just the word consistency came in that, and I want to ask you how it is to complete like more than 100 shows, 100 episodes of advertising is there, because that definitely is like shows your consistency and commitment towards it, and something that every creator who's listening to this or watching this would want to understand and know about how really be consistent. Because obviously, let's say after 50 episodes or 70, or it can also happen after 8 episodes, that you want to just take a break for this 2 weeks because something is going on in your personal life or work life. How do you still be consistent even when everything around you? I think this was during the pandemic, right? How many episodes? Some 50, 60 episodes. So tell us about how to be consistent in general as a creator.
I feel if you're a creator, you're not. So here's the thing, right? If you're committing to something because you're saying, okay, I'm committed to being a creator and I want to keep creating content, at some point you will stop. Because you look at metrics, you'll say, okay, I'm not getting enough listens, or I'm running out of guests, or I'm just tired. I mean, am I getting bored? Am I like, all those questions that everybody goes through? And I know, like I felt all those things. I've been through phases of thinking, okay, are people really listening, or is this really worth the time? Because I also used to travel to go to the IVM studio to record. Recording remotely has made life a lot easier, but I would still like finish work, schedule time with the guest, get in the car, go all the way, about a 45-minute drive, record, come back, right? I've done that week on week, but I genuinely love doing it. I realized that there was a creative side which I had not really tapped into for a long time, and as I started doing the podcast at a whim, right? I didn't really plan it out. I said, let's just try it out. It'll be fun to do. There was zero like. I mean, I give Amit and Kavita a lot of credit for the fact that they pushed me to start it. But at some point, it became a thing which I enjoyed doing. It's a part of who I am. So even before I start doing anything, I will always experiment a lot with it. And that's what I've learned from podcasting. So even if I start putting out workout reels on Instagram, that happened after 6 months of me sitting and mulling over, okay, should I put up something around workouts because I work out so much. And that's important to do. It's important to mull over it or just jump into it. Both things work. But I've been consistent because at some point I realized that if I'm not consistent, then you kind of fall off the grid, right? So same thing. I started Useless Information, the second podcast, in the middle of at the start of the pandemic.
Yeah.
I realized very early on, after the first 2 months, that I couldn't make it a consistent thing because it wasn't sustainable for me because I was doing it myself end to end, editing it, mastering it, distributing it, everything else.
Yeah.
So when I started the Varun Duggirala show now, I figured a team who'll work with me on it. I said, okay, I can't do all of it. I also realized that what I was trying to do then had a lot of gaps which I was pushing myself to do it. So when you start pushing yourself to do it, when you're not feeling satisfied with it, you know you need to stop. And it's fine if you take a month
Yeah.
off, 2 months off, rethink, kind of come back. I took many months off to kind of come back and even change the name. It's still the same show, but it's evolved to a different organism.
Yeah.
And I think that's important. It's important to what will make you stay consistent is more important than what you create in many ways. If something interests you, you just go ahead and do it. Like people subscribe to Naval Ravikant's podcast. It is literally him just talking into a mic.
Yeah.
He's consistent and he's also like, he's really enjoyable. Like most of the podcasts I enjoy are consistent because I can feel the hosts really enjoying it. And like now with the YouTube piece, right, I think about, okay, I want to do vlogs, I want to talk about tech products, I want to do all those things, but I'm like, will I really enjoy doing it because I'll enjoy watching it? So
Yeah.
I'll experiment for a bit, but if I feel I won't be, then I'll stop doing it. So that's the way I look at content.
Yeah. And how did the newsletter start for you? Like, how did you decide that you also want to start writing a newsletter while you are podcasting and everything else that's going on?
So I have a solid confession. Right? I have been trying to write a book for many years, and I honestly feel I can publish a book of unpublished prologues because I have tried to write a book in a very linear format always. Like, let's write a prologue first, not even introduction, right? Prologue. And I did that many times, and at some point, and I don't know how the newsletter happened, I just started reading a few newsletters. I'd taken a break from Advertising is Dead for the first time. I took a month off. I think it was October or November. And I'm like, okay, I have a break. It's not like you can take a break. Let's do something else. And for fun, I started writing because I said, come on, really write. Maybe a newsletter is simpler because at least if someone subscribes, they'll get it. With a blog, I don't know who will read it. Right.
Yeah,
So I just started that way and I wanted to share some things. And I thought, let me kind of polish up those writing skills which I always wanted to kind of put out. And that's how it started. And I've let it evolve as well. Right. I think it was 1 week I took off in between because I felt like I was trying to do too much. The initial couple of newsletters had 3 parts to it, like 3 different focus areas. Now it's 1 thought and a bunch of recommendations and 1 quote. And I realized that's simpler for me to do. Also because I am finally also working on a book, which has progressed further than a prologue. And so this helps me kind of hone my craft for the book as well. So they both feed each other.
And so when you take these decisions, is it like planned decisions or it just naturally like falls into its place automatically? Because how you're saying that, you always wanted to write a book, but now, the Substack newsletter is helping you to, just muscle up about the book. So is this all happening automatically or you plan this really well?
So it's not entirely unplanned, but it's not super planned as well. So I'll explain how let me put the book and newsletter in place. I've always wanted to understand what my kind of voice would be if I write. I've tried to write fiction. I've tried to write. I realized non-fiction could be good, but I was like, 1 second, is it too pompous for someone to write about? I'm not going to write an autobiography. They don't have that much kahani to write yet. And so I went around that, but at some point, I think Substack came to me because I saw that Substack allows you to do an audio and a written version. It started off on a whim. The idea was, okay, all newsletters are written. Yeah. This was a platform that allowed me to send an audio file. And in my head, I'm like, okay, that's interesting because regular podcast publishing works a certain way. Let me try this. This is almost like I'm sending you a private podcast every week, not out on public. I think it can be RSS I can put everywhere. I've chosen not to put it everywhere. But it's private. You get it only if you want it. And somehow that's what got me into it. I started writing. I started enjoying writing. And at some point, as I started writing this, I also figured out what I would want to write about if I ever wrote a book. So I did a couple of, like, I do these scribbles, and my iPad is full of them. I've started doing it on the iPad rather than paper because I keep losing paper. And I love the Apple Pencil. It's just one of those things that's really come to me. So I scribble. I have this couple of these notebooks in the iPad, and I use like 4 notebook apps, which is a problem because sometimes I forget which one I wrote it in.
Yeah.
So I'll scribble a bunch of these things down. I'll keep coming back to it, but there's an exercise I started to do, and this started very recently, last 6 months to a year, is where I write down and say, what do I really enjoy doing? What do I really enjoy not doing? In every process, like I don't enjoy mastering a podcast episode. I am not, and I used to be an editor. I used to love editing, so I hate doing that mastering. I don't necessarily want to have the business conversation around a podcast. I don't want to do the deal cracking. I don't necessarily want to. I don't want to write a book that is in a certain like linear format. I want to write a very non-linear book. So I put a lot of those things down, and somewhere when I look at what I love about it, what I don't love about it, what I'd rather not even do, what I want to learn to do, and it's very fluid in that sense. And I keep adding. So while these are 4 headers, the headers keep changing as I do this practice. I now do this every quarter, every 3 months I do it, and that helps me kind of focus my mind because I will want to do 10 things. Like I want to do live AMAs. I want to do. I want to have a Twitter Spaces property.
Yeah.
I will. I want to start putting up a lot more content around fitness and wellness and health because I'm really into that stuff. I want to talk about being a dad. So I will have these 50 things. I will write down almost like a brand content bucket. I'll write 50 brand pieces. I'm like, I obviously can't do all of them. What can I do with the time I have? Then I start drilling that down. So I use my nights for this. I spend about, and I sleep early. I sleep by, relatively early. I sleep by about 11:30, 12. But I spend a good 2 hours every night, kind of working on all the stuff that I want to do. So newsletter happens one night, intros for podcasts happen, some little part of the book happens, some workshop I want to do happen. So I use very focused 2 hours with a cup of tea every night. I don't watch streaming content at nights. Give me the time. That is the biggest productivity hack. I don't watch. I only watch shows or movies on a weekend, not on a weekday.
Okay.
I watch an insane amount of Instagram and YouTube and Twitter, but not platforms unless the cricket matches on, which I will still watch.
This while you were answering that, it reminds me of the conversation you, me, May, and Gautam were having, where May was saying that she has been telling you editing is so important, and all of those things.
We'll never agree on that, me and May.
And also, we have also had Amit Doshi on the show. So he was also talking about how podcasting and analytics and things like that. How do you measure because you're doing so many different things, like how you're mentioning newsletter, Twitter Spaces, Clubhouse, AMAs. I think you also did an IG live session which went on for like 90 minutes or 100 minutes.
IG live 90 minutes. I did a Twitter Spaces session went on for 2 hours. That was like, it was a lot of fun.
And I remember I watched that IG live session later. I wasn't active and online that time, but I watched it later. So when you're doing these multiple things, how do you, let's say, are you also thinking about what will I get out of it? What's the output of this? Or no, it's just with the pure joy of creating it, doing it. How do you look at it?
Honest confession, I used to be a huge consumer of Gary Vee's content. I'm now a sporadic consumer. I like a lot of the stuff he says. I feel that his tone is a little hardcore for me to go to all the time. And I don't subscribe to many things he says. I subscribe to also many things he says. But I think the system in which he creates is very interesting. And I've always found that to be the most interesting part, is that he will look at creating so many pieces of content. And while he's not monetizing it the way everybody else would, he's obviously monetizing it. Right? He's built that entire brand around himself in that sense. And I look at formats that way. I look at how YouTubers do their content. So a lot of the stuff I'll watch is, okay, I love to watch studio tours of YouTubers. I will watch how someone works on their content. I will maybe subscribe to a Skillshare class that somebody has. And I do all of these because I'm like, okay, I think we look at things in too linear a format, and I've said linear non-linear too many times today. Is that a newsletter might not necessarily make me money, but it might get me a way to get published tomorrow because I actually have work to show as a writer.
Yeah.
Having a podcast doesn't just have to be about you becoming India's biggest podcaster, right? It helps you in personal branding. It helps you in connecting to so many more people. It helps your day job. I feel everybody who should have a podcast because you meet more people, and in many cases you just find different. There are so many pluses to just putting stuff out there. Your medium might be a podcast. It might be a newsletter. It might be just putting something out on social media. It might be doodles for all you care. But I look at what I get out of each of these in a slightly different format. Then okay, how many followers do I have? It's a vanity metric we all love. I was excited when I had got more than 10k followers. I'm like, wow, 10k, and I'm like, one second, chota number in the larger context of thing, but I'm still you feel it's interesting. You pat yourself on the back for like 5 seconds and you move on with life. But what I really look at success as is I feel I have a lot of people who consistently reach out and have conversations with me. I have a lot of listeners who I've spoken to many times over the last couple of years. And I find more and more of those. And when I see a listener, and I see that sometimes I have some people who are very hardcore about my newsletter. I have a few people who write in and comments or something or the other after every single newsletter, but might not be an overlap to the guy who's listening to my podcast. Or somebody who might comment on, like somebody commented on a YouTube video I put up the other day, and I was smiling, saying, and the first episode of the Varun Dugirala show was with Ranveer, and he said, even though it's your first ever podcast, you're very good at this, right? And I was smiling because I'm like, it's great, it's a different audience, and it's fabulous to find that. I also commented saying, "Ye bhi dekh lena," and I sent him the other advertising his ad ka link. But and again, I'm finding Twitter exciting because I think that's an entirely different audience, and so is LinkedIn. You'll have overlaps, but I like to connect with people and have those conversations. Conversations literally drive. I feel they're the fuel that drive me. So the more of those that I have, I feel the network effects give you ways to monetize. I mean, I might just do a course tomorrow. I could write a book. I could do a series. I could host something which is a streaming chat show. Who knows? I'm never a person who said no to an opportunity if I felt I could do it and enjoy it. So and money comes. I feel if as long as you figure a way to sustain yourself and you have the ability to play the long game, it's always works out.
Yeah. A small practical question on this, because while you're active on Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, podcasts, Instagram, and also creating content, planning, scheduling, and all of those things, do you sometimes get overwhelmed with the screen and the internet because
All
it's
the time.
just like, too many things, too many people, too many conversations? Like, how do you manage it in your head?
Most days I don't. It's one of the things I'm actually been working on a lot because I realized my screen time was atrocious. Right? I was crossing 8 hours a day on screen, and I was like, that's like, you got to go down. I do a few things. I take time off from different things at different times. Like over the last week, I haven't worked out. I just wanted to give my body a break as well. So 1 week of no working out, no focusing on workout reels and all that stuff. Took some time off on writing a bunch of stuff, just the newsletters, what I wrote. So I give my brain breaks on certain things, and some days your brain just tells you to take a break. Right? I was trying to write last night. Mind said, "Boss, shut down. Nahi hoga." But I still try to write because I always believe that you should just put something on paper, even though it's terrible. That also, after 2 paragraphs, I knew that was like more than terrible. There's no way this is ever going to work. So sometimes you just move on, and I struggle with that a lot. But I give my mind breaks, and it's important to, even between the day, give it a short break. Breathing helps. Weird enough, but I know we do it all the time, and it was the biggest cliche, right? So I was reading this. I was watching a masterclass of this guy. I forget the writer's name, who wrote a book on breathing, or was it sleep? I don't remember. I've read too many. Oh yeah, there's this book on breathing, and I was reading snippets of it.
Mm-hmm.
And he talks about how we don't even breathe right as human beings anymore, right? We do half breaths because we're
Hmm.
rushing through life. We're doing half breaths. He said, you sit down and do full breaths for like 1 minute. It'll refresh.
Hmm.
It's almost like that reboot, right? It's almost like that. Sometimes when you restart your phone,
Yeah.
just sitting and breathing for 10 minutes can restart your head. And this is not spiritual. This is none of those things. I think it
Yeah.
just gives you a bit of pause.
Yeah.
But I take there are many weeks during the year where I don't do any of this. But when I know I'm going to take a break, I bank. Banking helps me a lot. I do two podcasts a week because when I was recording episodes for the Varun Dugi show, I had banked about 4 extra episodes for Advertising is Dead. So,
Hmm.
and once that gets done, I like right now I'm not recording for the Varun Dugi show. I've already recorded it till for the next 3-4 weeks.
Hmm.
So I'm doing a lot of Advertising is Dead recording. So also those kind of breaks help. So
Yeah.
as long as it is scheduling, but this kind of scheduling is great because it gives your
Yeah.
brain time to switch from one thing to the other.
Yeah.
My social content is a system. I've built that for myself because I know okay they're going to be my pillars are there's a lot of stuff on books and insights. So there'll be a lot of quotes, book quotes, highlights, and all that stuff around my life, which is going to be, let's say, fitness, stuff with my daughter, because I think dads don't talk enough about being dads,
Hmm.
and other random stuff, right? Like I found a piece of I found a old packet of Lego that I'd gotten as a random giveaway once, which was lying in my cupboard. So I sat for
Hmm.
15 minutes, did nothing else, just made a small Star Wars Lego thing.
Hmm.
It was amazing. My brain was on like fire. Like I was so happy. And so you find these small things that kind of let your mind kind of this thing. My workouts help that way. My 1 hour a day workout is
Hmm.
like that big booster of just like getting fresh.
Yeah. Do you also have some creative muscle workouts or like mantras or tips and tricks, something like that, of how people can be more creative in what they do?
Um, I've actually never believed I'm creative. I reference a lot, which is what has helped me. It was the biggest joke even when I was working when I started off in television, right? Is that Varun will have a reference for everything. You give me a show, I will give you a format. Even now, when I look at a video, I'm thinking, okay, this is a great graphic, or this is a great like format or a flow, or okay, this guy's using music from a website. Maybe I'll just bookmark. So I bookmark a lot. I save a lot of stuff. So most days my content doesn't come with me instantaneously coming up with it. I have tons and tons of notes which I have just saved clippings from websites, or something which I have found which is lying there. Most days when I can't think of something, I just go through those and I'll find 5 things. So I'd say the more you reference, the more you'll actually be able to come with creative ideas, because you're not going to lift it. You're not going to just replicate it word to word. You're going to reference it and you'll come up with your own thing. That's a far better way to do it than to say there's no original idea. The biggest cliche in the world is an original
Yeah.
creative idea. Nahi hoga.
Yeah. Yeah.
But don't copy also. Like this blatant copy business is a bit much, but I reference a lot, and that's always helped me. Like now it's a system, it's built into how I am.
Yeah.
So that really helps me work. Like even how I write my newsletter is based in part by how, let's say, Scott Galloway writes his newsletter,
Hmm.
how Ryan Holiday writes his. Ryan Holiday
Yeah.
is on stoicism. Scott Galloway
Yeah.
is on business and everything else, but
Yeah.
I like the way they write. I also love how James Clear writes. I found his newsletter much later in life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I love how he writes. I love the format. It's beautiful. Like, I just think it's so interesting because I love one thing he says is that a newsletter doesn't have to be a novel, right?
Yeah.
People have 5 minutes to read something. They don't have 20
Yeah.
minutes to read it.
Yeah.
So a 5 minute newsletter is better than giving them a 20 minute this thing, unless you're a journalist.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that's a reference point, right? My newsletters become
Yeah.
shorter because I read that. I'm like, let me try it, and it actually
Hmm.
got a lot more response. I saw a lot more people liking it and commenting. I said, okay, this is great.
Yeah. Yeah.
So try stuff out.
Yeah. One last question, and I'm gonna club it like a big question into one small question is, I want to know what would Varun, who was an engineer, would advise to other engineers, and also Varun, who's an entrepreneur, will advise to entrepreneurs, and also Varun, who is now a big creator, will advise other creators.
Varun the engineer now, Varun now advising engineers now, or me
Yeah.
the engineer then, me the engineer there was like, boss, mat karna, is like what I would have said, but when I was that, but no. I feel that engineers are the most creative people in the world today. And I feel that you need to own that. I think that engineers don't own that enough. A lot of engineers do it as a degree, go do an MBA, get a job, finish that off,
Yeah.
right? To be an engineer is actually the most creative thing. I think of the most innovative people when you talk about it. I think innovative and creative have kind of merged because of engineers, because we brought both together.
Yeah.
I feel that engineers need to own that a lot more. The number of people I have met on my podcast who are engineers, who are in the creative space, is phenomenal, right? And everybody said that it wasn't the frustration of it. I feel it was just that that's why they wanted to be engineers. They wanted to make stuff. They wanted to create stuff, and you found that channel somewhere else. You found that release somewhere else. So if you're going to be an engineer, make sure you're a creative engineer. Because you are. I mean, that's what an engineer is supposed to be, if you ask me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Varun, the entrepreneur would. Okay, this is going to. Being an entrepreneur isn't about being the smartest person in the room. It's not about being the person with the best decisions in the room. It's about being the most supportive person in the room. You need to be able to put together the right set of people, give them the right kind of support, take care of all the stuff which they shouldn't really be spending time taking care of, and then what you create will succeed. And it's not about you; it's about them, because the company is about the people. It's not about the founders. It's not about. I think vision evolves. Vision evolves
Yeah.
because of the people, right? When someone says, "Okay, what's the culture of Glitch?" I'm like, the culture of Glitch is what the people bring to it.
Yeah.
It changes every day, and you can set some guardrails, but I think in the end it's about the people. So make sure you're the best facilitator, which is why when someone says, what is your job as an entrepreneur, I say my job has been to be a janitor. I help clean up shit. Because ideally people should only come to you when they're in deep trouble and something has to be sorted out, right?
Yeah.
They shouldn't come to you for anything else, because that's something they can take care of, and you then build it into them that only when the problems pile up high enough do you need to come to me. You should be able to handle it before that. It builds ownership, right? So then they're almost entrepreneurs themselves in taking care
Yeah.
of things.
Yeah.
Which is, I think the one thing I miss is that no one has asked me about some water problem in the toilet in office for the last year. That is one thing I miss. I'm like, that was to be consistent. Ki Varun, there's pani nahi aa raha hai bathroom mein. It has been a question I've been asked for 11 years. The 11th year I have not been asked that. For 10 years I was asked that question. So be ready for that question. Figure a solve for that, because you have to solve it. No one else is going to do that. Which I think is the thing. So if you really want to be an entrepreneur, be that person. Be that person who's just going to support other people in doing something which is going to be amazing. And that's what I've always believed is the right way to do it. I think Varun, the creator, is you don't just have to be a creator. I think the word creator sometimes looked at as being this, okay, it's a job, right? It's something you do.
Yeah.
We can all be creators no matter what we do in life. I feel the one key part about being a creator is you're not a creator to make money. You're not a creator
Yeah.
to become a star or to get fame.
Yeah.
You're a creator because you enjoy doing it. One of my most liked episodes on Advertising is Dead was the one with Tanmay, right? And I think he articulated what I felt so well. He said that what would you do for no money? What I do as a creator, I would do for no money. It's great to get money.
Yeah.
I love it. I mentioned Naval Ravikant. I was watching a clip today where he says that to get people to a certain level, you need to first get them rich. And I think he said everybody in the world should have a certain amount of money, because then they can really realize their dreams and aspirations. So you are a creator because you enjoy doing it. If it can also make you enough money to be able to be the sole thing you do in life, that's amazing. But it doesn't have to be the sole thing you do in life also. You can do it while having a job, because I think being a creator helps make your job better, helps make how
Yeah.
you perform. Like, I am better in client conversations now than I've been through my entire career, because I know how to have a conversation really well.
Yeah.
I have almost honed it as a craft over the last whatever 2.5 years, and I use that really well with clients. I know how to direct traffic now a lot better in that sense. So yeah, there are I'd say there are effects of that feed into your job as well.
Yeah. Varun, I think this has been like a very wholesome conversation altogether, to know you as a person from your childhood, engineering days, your relation with family, and how you manage time, the work, and everything else. And now towards the end, when you have shared these three amazing tips, I think nobody must be looking at engineers today like that, where we're considering them that, be the most innovative, creative folks out there. And thank you so much for. I
Thanks, Pawan.
start.
This was a
I this
fabulous
this
conversation.
this is the second thank you. Okay,
Second
in
one, very
throughout.
good. You're
Yes.
down to two. You're well-rounded. Thank you has happened on this episode.
So that's the second one. But yeah, I think thoroughly enjoy speaking to you always. And it's going to be a wonderful listen, and people who will watch this. And probably we'll host you again soon. I think people, when we were speaking to Roshan at Pepper Social, he was referring about you and Viraj.
Yeah.
And probably we'll bring you both together on a conversation and talk more about some things around creator economy in general.
That'd be perfect. I mean, and always a pleasure to talk to you, Pawan. It's. I think all conversations I've had with you have always kind of. So I have this thing, and it's what I want to leave it at, is that whenever I come out of a good podcast recording, I record in our bedroom, and I come out, and Pooja sees me and says, "You had a good recording, right?" And because she knows, because I walk out with a big smile, I walk out satisfied. I feel that's important. So I'm walking out of this conversation smiling. So it's been fabulous.
Wow. Thank you so much, Varun. Thank you.